Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady. My co-host, Matt Scott, is not with me today because we have a unique episode that we'd like to share with you. This is an interview that I recorded with a friend of mine, Micho Escobar from Colombia, shortly after a trip that I did with him in the area. So I had done an earlier trip with Micho where we rode all the way out to the border of Venezuela with another mutual friend, Sinway Xavier, that you can listen to on the podcast as well. And then this second trip that I did down, I had actually done a journey down to Lima, Peru, and had ridden all the way back to Colombia solo in 2016. So this is my conversation that I had with Micho in 2016, talking about traveling in Colombia. What a beautiful country this is, filled with absolutely wonderful people. So hopefully by the end of this conversation that you listen to with Micho and myself, you have a different perspective on Colombia, and maybe it moves up your list. So the audio should be pretty good on this, but it is recorded with a couple iPhones, so take that into mind, but I think it is worth listening to. Thank you for joining us. Hello, I'm Scott Brady with Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, and I am in beautiful Colombia with my good friend Mauricio Escobar from Elephant Moto. And we're going to talk a little bit today about traveling in South America, but mostly about traveling in Colombia, because this is something that many Americans and other people around the world, they're a little bit concerned about traveling to a place like Colombia because of what they've heard about in the past. Now, the one thing I don't want you to do is take Mauricio's last name into account when we talk about safety and traveling in Colombia, being Escobar, but he has no relation to the Escobar of the past, and he's a great ambassador for his country, and we're going to learn a lot about what it means to travel in Colombia. So, Mauricio, give me a little bit of a background on your travels, your experience, not only as a motorcyclist, but a motorcycle trainer, and then briefly what Elephant Motorcycle does.
All right. Well, I've been riding motorcycles since I was a little kid, 11 years old. I went through the paces, like the little Hondas in the farm, XR80s, then XR200, then doing the trips. Then I went to live in San Francisco, and that's where I bought my first motorcycle, which is like that first big step for any motorcyclist, and my first street bike. And I started to get into the whole motorcycle thing. First it was like I was younger, so it was more the street bikes, super bikes, type of sport bikes, type of things, and then my brother, he was doing a trip from San Francisco to Washington and Washington to San Francisco. And he had an R1100 GS. And my dad, he was like, well, I think you should do part of this trip with him. And I was like, yeah, that didn't cross my mind. He was doing it. It wasn't something that I was into at the moment. And I had a Honda Super Hawk at the time. And I was like, well, sure, let's do it. So I went with my brother on the Super Hawk. Obviously, the bad choice of bike for the trip. But that was my first long distance trip. It was maybe like 10 days. I did the section from Washington to San Francisco, and I could see him on his R1100. He was comfortable. He was okay with doing something, 40 miles an hour, just chilling. And I was hunchback on the Super Hawk. And that got me into it. That was the thing.
Inspired you for travel.
That was the thing that got me into adventure travel, long distance travel on motorcycles. And I started doing trips. Every time I could, I would do trips. I did the Continental Divide, and we went from Canada to Mexico, the dirt roads. I went to China for a month, and with a buddy, we rented a motorcycle with a sidecar, and we were just riding around for like a month.
And you've also ridden in Morocco.
And and then with the time, those were like the first initial trips, and then I went to Michigan. And that was like another click in the life. I was like, I couldn't ride motorcycle days. The winter was tough, and I got a little bit antsy. So I said, I gotta get out of here. So I decided to quit my job that I had there. I came back to Colombia, and I started to consider, motorcycle touring as a business or as a career path for me, as a choice. And my first step was to go and do some work with other companies that were doing it at the time, and I did, and I went. and worked as a motorcycle guide for a company that was doing tours in South America. And I went, in Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Brazil, doing tours during 8 months, learning how it's done, what needs to happen. And then I came back to Colombia, and I started a company in Colombia, and that's how Elephant got its start. I'm a certified BMW instructor. I'm a certified BMW tour guide, and what we like to do, Elephant is more than just motorcycle tours or rentals. It's experiences for life. It's stories to tell for a lifetime, and we provide our customers the opportunity to, one, get to know a country, which is awesome, and two, through the motorcycles, you have these experiences that bring you closer to new people, bring you closer to a country, provide you an experience that you're going to remember for the rest of your life.
And I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this fireside chat with you, is because my experience in Colombia has been amazing. The first trip that we did together that included Sinway Xavier, Overland Journal's creative director, we went all the way out through Los Llanos to a place called Puerto Carreño, and we had a proper adventure. I mean, this was an area of the country that you hadn't even traveled, and we got extremely remote. It was very difficult terrain. It didn't feel like a traditional tour at all, and that was one of the things that impressed me most about Elephant and the way that you conducted the trip, was that I felt like we were all on an adventure together, and it wasn't this highly scripted experience, and that allowed for a lot of that opportunity for adventure. And for me, I think that really captured a lot about what people can see and experience in Colombia. And you've shared with me a couple of the other trips that you do, one up into the peninsula in the north, which is a very remote area. And also you do trips into the coffee region if people are looking for maybe a little bit more of an on-road and mild off-road experience. But I think one of the things that's most important initially is to kind of dispel this myth that Colombia as a whole is a dangerous place to travel. My experience now, having been here 3 times, is that the big cities are like any big city in the world. There's places that are very safe, and there's places that are less safe. But Colombia doesn't feel any less safe than the other places that I've developed or that I've traveled in Latin America. In fact, I feel for the most part that Bogota, for example, is very safe to walk around in at night. And one of the ways that I always determine that is if you see women and children out and about. So even at 11 o'clock at night, you'll see women walking with their children and families walking through the park. And when you start to see that in an area, you know that generally where you're at is pretty safe. Once you start to see the people go away and the families go away, and you just see the guys in dark shadows, that's when you need to get a little more concerned. But I haven't even felt that at all here in Bogota. And then you and I have also had the opportunity of traveling to these extreme corners of the country as well. When we were in Los Llanos, again, I never felt even one time that I was in an area that wasn't safe. And then you and I just traveled over the Colombian death road on the day of a rather historic vote here in Colombia. And again, people were smiling, and they embraced us with open arms. And other than the dangers of the road itself, I didn't feel like I was in a place that was dangerous. I felt like I was in a place that was coming out of a period of time in the history of the country that maybe things were a little bit more dangerous, but it feels very safe, and it feels like there's a lot of optimism in the spirit of the Colombians.
Yeah, I think, well, Colombia is going through an important time right now. We've been at war for a long time, and we are also at a moment where people are discovering Colombia. So for me, what I tell my customers is this is the time to come, right now. Because if you come 5 years from now, you're going to probably find a very different Colombia in terms of tourism, because right now it's genuine. You're getting the real Colombia, but the good Colombia. It's not the Colombia you see, or maybe you've experienced in the news that you've heard about. Obviously, we went through some rough times, but those times are, they're looking promising. It's changing. So it's the time when, if you go to a small town that, like the ones that we've been to, that people, they're genuine about their interaction with you, because want you to know that it's safe. They want you to know that it's okay, that you should come out here, that they're proud of their country. So they come out and they show it to you, and they're gonna go out of their way to make sure you have a good experience. So we're going through that change, where it's opening up. Not too many people have come yet. A lot of more people are coming, so it's changing. So I think in terms of tourism, unfortunately, it tends to corrupt or
Distort, maybe.
it's the word is rough, but it can prostitute a country, because people, they start to see advantage in the foreigner. So they know they can take money, so they maybe start charging more, or they'll swindle you out of something. They know that the tourist is an opportunity, but right now we're not at that place. We're at a place where, please come, check it out. This is my country. It's beautiful. We're not all war. We're not all violence. We're good people. So it's a very good moment to come and see it. And I think it's important to come and check it out.
I can see that for the most part, Colombians, they really have this pride in their country. And there's some great examples I think I can give. One of the things that stands out almost immediately is there's much less trash on the road in Colombia than you'll see oftentimes in other countries in Central America and South America. There's also this pride of ownership. If you look, even though their home may be simple, they take good care of it. It has flowers out front. It's recently been painted. There's not trash and weeds and everything in the yard. And even though their vehicle may be older, they take pride in that. You can see it's been painted, and that they tried to fix the dents. And for me, I think that says a lot about the future of Colombia, and it says a lot about the spirit of the Colombian people. And then I've also found that riding here is a lot more safe than other developing countries. In fact, I find that the Colombian drivers are some of the better drivers that I've encountered in South America. And I always use a way to gauge drivers. I'll rate them as either competent, neutral, or incompetent, and I'll either rate them as calm, neutral, or aggressive. And like, for example, when you go to Peru, you encounter aggressive and incompetent. Whereas I find that that in Colombia, they're pretty neutral. They're not overly competent, but they're also not incompetent. They're not overly aggressive, but they're not also calm. I find that the truck drivers are very professional. They give you some space. For the most part, they try not to kill you. And I think that that's a great example of another reason to come and ride in Colombia, because you have relatively new roads in many cases, and you have pretty considerate drivers, and that makes for some fun riding. And there's also this little tinge of lawlessness in the sense that the police infrastructure isn't that well developed, and they're not everywhere. So if you're back on some road in Colombia, you can actually let it hang out there a little bit and have some fun on the bike, which are things that I've really enjoyed traveling in Colombia.
Yeah, I think it's a country that has it all. From a geographical standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, for motorcyclists in this case, the mountains, they provide twisties, endless twisties, and you get a super cool combination of, if you really want dirt and adventure, you can do it, off-roading. But if you want paved and you like, the paved roads and good paved roads and twisty roads, you can do it. And if you want a combination, you got it all. And also geographically, Colombia is rated as the second most diverse country in the world. I think I was telling you that the other day. And it's the most, second, the cell phone went off. Second most biodiverse country in the world after Brazil. Brazil is number one, and Brazil is 7 times larger than Colombia. So it says a lot. In a very small piece of land, you've got a ridiculous amount of biodiversity. And you also have, in the north, we have deserts, with sand dunes, Africa, we've got the jungles, we got Amazon, we got the Andes, that when they come here, they give us a gift, because they come from Peru, Ecuador, Chile, everything, just one single mountain range. And as soon as they hit Colombia, they decided to split into 3. So you got these 3 mountain ranges that cover most of the country, and you got 4,000 meter passes, you've got 0 meters, you've got rivers, you've got jungles, everything in a relatively small but big place. So it's.
I was also really impressed with the Tatacoa Desert that we went to after the Death Road. I mean, it reminded me of my home in Arizona. There was cactus and red earth like in Sedona, and it was really beautiful. And there's also pretty good infrastructure. There's clean places to stay that aren't very expensive, but they're nice. They're well maintained. The food's good. I've never gotten sick eating the food here in Colombia, so I eat everything from the salads to the meat on the plate, and I've never gotten sick here either. So I think that says a lot about traveling in Colombia and the diversity of it. You can be in Cartagena on the beach in an old beautiful colonial walled city, and then you can also be in the middle of the desert and sleeping in a tent if you want to. So there's camping available as well. So, kind of to conclude, my experience has been very good in Colombia overall. I've never felt unsafe. I've never gotten sick. I find that the roads are really enjoyable to ride, and there's plenty of technical terrain if you want in the dirt. There's a lot of diversity, which means you can kind of do whatever interests you as far as a rider. But to give the viewer a little bit of a summary about how they can travel in Colombia, they can basically do a tour with you or some of the other providers in the country, and you seem to offer some of the more remote and adventure-minded tours, but then you also do the traditional on-road and light off-road stuff. And then they can also rent bikes, which I think in many countries is difficult. So they can actually call you up and rent a 1200 GS. Oh. So talk to me a little bit about how that process works. What does this person need to do in order to be able to ride a 1200 in Colombia?
Well, it's fairly simple. I think even if it's on a tour, if it's a rental or all that, all you need is, your driver license. It's valid from the country that you come from. They give you up to 3 months, by law, you can drive with your foreign driver license. You can book it with us, and, depending on availability, you can go, if you want to rent a motorcycle for a month, you can do it. If you want to do it for 5 days, you can do it. We do mostly the GSs because it's the right kind of bike for Colombia, for the roads in Colombia. If it's a 700, the 800, or the 1200, we can offer that. And so you book it with us. You got to leave a credit card on file in case of damages. The bikes are fully insured, but you're responsible for the deductible in case of total loss or things
or
like
if
that.
you drop the bike and damage some plastic or whatever. So about how much does it cost a day to rent a 1200 GS?
So the 1200 is $160 per day. And then the rates start to lower if you rent it more and more days. So we got a rate from 1 to 5, from 6 to 10, and from 11 onwards. In terms of days, and it starts to lower a little bit.
So a person that's a little bit more confident traveler, they can call you up and take a 1200 and go off and explore the country on their own, or with friends. Or if they want to get a little more remote and be a little more supported, then they can also go on one.
Absolutely, we do everything from fully supported tours, with everything included. We pick you up at the airport, and you come, and you don't have to mind yourself with the time that it takes to plan a trip, so we pick you up, we take you on a 12-day tour, 15-day tour, 8-day tour. And or if you want to, like you said, there's those travelers that tours are not, that's not what they want, that's not what they're looking for. They're more on their own. They can rent the bike and go off on an amazing adventure, and we're happy to provide them with routes, hotel recommendations, like tell them, listen, if you like this kind of thing, you should go here. If you like that, you should go there. And we also provide those, so if you're going on the rental and you don't know so much about the country, we'll give you as much information as you want so that you have a very rich experience. So,
well, that's great, Micho. Thank you so much for the time. So as you can see, Colombia is a beautiful place. It's a safe place to travel. A little bit of research and infrastructure really helps ensure that. We've got brand new 1200 GSs available to rent, it looks like, at several different sources throughout the country. So I would recommend that maybe you consider Colombia as your next adventure destination. And then also, in the spirit of full disclosure, I started off traveling with Micho as a journalist, but Micho and Mauricio and I have become good friends. So I consider him to be a great friend, and I'm sharing this information obviously because I believe in his business, but I do have that personal friendship with him, which I'm sure does reflect some bias. So make sure that you also research other providers in the country of Colombia. There are other people that rent motorcycles. I just don't have personal experience with them. Get out there and enjoy it.